Is the housing market going to crash because of the new tariffs or the threatened tariffs? We're going to talk about that in this video. Hi, my name is Melody Wilson. I'm an Edmonton realtor here, and I wanted to talk about all the articles and all of the things that we are hearing about on the news. And I'm going to just read through some of the articles that I'm finding through Google, like I'm sure you are seeing. We're probably seeing a ton of information and misinformation all over social media in regards to what is Trudeau doing, what is Trump doing, what do the tariffs mean for me, should I wait to buy my house, should I hurry up and buy my house, should I sell my house? So many questions. And so we're going to talk through that today. And I want to talk to you about some reasoning in terms of just being focused on the facts and what are the things that cause a housing market crash. And are we actually headed towards that direction? Now, if you haven't been following my videos each week live, we talk every single week about where the real estate market currently is. We're currently sitting in a seller's market. And what that means is that we have a whole lot of buyers and very little listings, so very little homes for sale. We're sitting at an all-time low, and that is driving up the prices because there's so many people who want to buy a house, and it drives that price up because people will overbid to win the home, and it continues to drive that price up. Our interest rates are in a decent place. They have been higher, they've been lowering now, and it's just that place where people are like ready to buy. Edmonton typically is more affordable. Hence, we've seen a huge rush from Calgary come to Edmonton, from Ontario, from BC come to Edmonton. So how is the tariffs going to affect this market, and will it affect the market? If we take a look at BNN Bloomberg, they just released an article that says the Trump tariffs risk $29,000 rise in U.S. home construction costs. Now, this is in regards to the American market, but I don't know if you've realized that the American market and the Canadian market are very tied together. As much as everyone's trying to do separation now, it's really difficult. You kind of have mom and dad who have kids together, and it's impossible to just say, that kid is mine, that kid is yours. It's not that simple. So the effect that the American economy is going to have on his tariffs that he's imposed on Canada will affect, of course, their economy, and it'll also affect ours. What is it going to do? Nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody knows exactly what it's going to do. There's a lot of speculation going on. And speculation doesn't always drive the real estate market. There are some people that will buy based on speculation, just like when you're dealing with stocks, but that's not necessarily the most sound way to make a decision when you're looking at a home purchase for your family. Another article that I've just found from the Toronto Star, their headline is, "In recessions, people don't go out and buy houses. How tariffs would impact Canada's already struggling home building industry." So note, they're talking about the home building industry. I also am very curious where they're getting the word recession from. In Alberta, we're not in a recession. I'm not familiar that Toronto is in a recession. However, that's the starting article. That's that clickbait that the Toronto Star is giving you. Tariffs and counter tariffs would hurt buyer sentiment and raise prices for construction materials, experts say. And I did have somebody ask me if they thought the pricing of housing to build a house would be more expensive. I have news for you. The prices of building a home has increased over the last 5 years, especially because of our global pandemic. So I don't think this is any different. I find it's just another excuse for prices to go up. And there's also demand that's allowing that to continue to happen. So in this article, it says Canadian home builders got some reprieve Monday when Justin Trudeau announced that there would be a 30-day pause on tariffs, but the possibility of a trade war with the U.S. continues to threaten a blow to an industry that says it's already struggling with high costs. That I agree. The Prime Minister announced new border and crime commitments late Monday afternoon and said tariffs would be on hold while the two countries, quote unquote, work together. So this is interesting because this is from a home building perspective. Does the new home build market affect the resale market? Yes and no. It's interesting because a lot of home buyers don't typically look at both sides, and they usually go, if I'm buying new, I'm buying new. They don't even look at what the resale is, even though there might be a house that's 1 or 2 years old, the same model for a lot less than new build, but people will still buy new. So take it as a grain of salt as what you would do with that. They do impact each other. At one point when it was cheaper to buy new, that impacted the resale market, but people still didn't all come flooding to new. And then it became more expensive to buy new. People didn't just all leave resale or all go back to resale. They still stayed in the new build. So if you're deciding on what to do, again, as a buyer, you need to understand what is important to you. What are you looking for before making that decision? Is it worth it to you to pay that premium for a new build home versus a resale home? So let's go back to the statement that they started off with about in recession, people don't buy homes. Now, that's also a lie, because when we were in a minor recession in Alberta, I was a working realtor still, and homes were still moving. Sure, they're not moving as fast as they have been in the last couple of years, but homes are always moving. So this doom and gloom, the sky is falling, is not a good look on people. It's important to make sure you understand what the actual economy is and is doing. Now, this person who said this was Frank Clayton, the senior research fellow at Toronto Metropolitan University Centre. So this is a person who is an academic who's making this statement. He's stating that he highlighted RBC's finding that unemployment could rise by 2 to 3% amidst a trade war, stating that he's speculating that jobs will be lost. Canada's GDP could also drop by 3.4 to 4.2 percentage points, the study found. So this is interesting because that's an academic making this claim, not a professional realtor, not the industry, not the city. It's just that's their statement. Then you've got Dave Wilkes, president and CEO of Building Industry and Land Development Association, said that the pending tariffs couldn't come at a worse time. This is to do with then the new build. Now, it talks about instability for buyers could result in fewer new home sales across the Greater Toronto area. And let's not forget, the Greater Toronto area and Alberta and Edmonton is not the same. We do not have the same market. There's a lot of our friends from Ontario moving to Alberta, but they're not directly tied. Of course, we are all somewhat related. That's why, because Calgary's prices got so much higher, more people came to Edmonton, more demand. And Ontario and BC, they're coming here because of that demand. Maybe we'll start to see less people migrating if affordability starts to increase in the other places, but they're quite a distance away from the affordability that Edmonton has. So I don't foresee it just dropping from underneath, and Edmonton's still not that crazy when it comes to house prices. So continuing on this, it says an economic slowdown brought on by Trump's tariffs would lead to fewer housing starts in Canada, as recessionary conditions would reduce pre-construction purchases. And this is coming from the Canadian Home Builders Association CEO Kevin Lee. Additionally, he said Canada's countervailing tariffs could cause construction costs at home to increase. Lee said the impact will vary from one region to another, and Ontario would feel the impact of Canadian tariffs on U.S. imports of aluminum and steel. So this, again, this is coming from Toronto Star. They're very focused on that, and they're really worried. And Toronto is not going to be the only indicator of what's happening all across Canada. It's important to look at Alberta itself too. So let's take a look and see if there are any other articles that specifically talk about Alberta, because that's where we live. All right, so when I Google Trump tariffs, Canada real estate, and Alberta, I am getting some articles that are a few days old, and they haven't really reflected what's going on in terms of the most recent things, because things are constantly changing right now. The article from CBC News from Calgary states how Trump's tariffs might land in Alberta if the clock runs out on Canada's 30-day reprieve. And this was actually just updated. So given the temporary nature of Donald Trump's tariff reprieve, everyday Albertans are still bracing for the impact, and analysts continue to caution about a challenging road ahead. Now, that's no big surprise. Regardless of what happens, there's change impending, and we do all need to do some sort of bracing, but understand what degree is that going to affect your decisions. Does it mean that you should not be moving? Now, if your job potentially could be impacted, then maybe that is something you need to consider. But if you're self-employed and you're in an industry where it won't be as affected as much, does that mean that you're going to change your decisions? Again, that's really important. Think about your specific situation in this. Now, the article continues to read, the planned imposition of tariffs on Canadian goods did not materialize after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau did his first announcement that would then also put tariffs on the other direction. Given the temporary nature, possibly slowing demand and reduced investments, a reduction in the province's GDP and rising unemployment will be on the radar in the next 30 days. Should further fences not be mended between the two nations? Now, I don't know if they're going to mend at all. I sure hope they do. But regardless if they mend or not, there is going to be a change. There is a change in the air for economics. And it's important to understand that for all businesses across the US and Canada. So in this article, it also states, although much of the conversation in the province's recent days has evolved around the impacts on tariffs of the energy industry, Alberta farms, factories, and plants would also be in trouble if disagreements continue. And all of these things impact Alberta because Alberta, that is the bulk of their business. So you think about people who work for the companies, but you're also thinking about there are American companies in Alberta who have employed Albertans, and that could also impact employment as well. So when you're looking at if the housing market's going to crash, you need to see a few different factors for a housing market to crash. The housing market's going to crash if everyone stops buying. That is like the easiest way to put it. So how would people decide to just stop buying altogether? Well, they have no money. So they have no more down payment. It's all gone because they have no job anymore. So you do need to look at the unemployment rate, and the change in unemployment rate, it depends on where as well that impacts it. Is 1%, 2%, 3% change in unemployment rate going to have a massive impact? That's something left to be debated. Don't forget, if you're comparing from today's 2025 to like 1970s, you can't even compare them. They're not even the same. In the 1970s, we didn't have all the global trade and intertwining that we had, or like I said earlier, like we didn't have all those children with Canada and the US. We have a lot more children now here in Alberta, and it's important to think about those outside circumstances, environment from 1970s to 2025. We have technology. We have almost like a global market because of the fact that we have no borders because how easy things have gone. That's all going to impact things. So will all the buyers just stop buying? There's been a lot of buyers waiting to buy. They just haven't had houses to buy. So if the housing market was to crash, we'd have to see a complete stop of housing purchases altogether, which I don't see happening. There are a lot of people that still need homes. There's not very much inventory for people to buy already. So if that slows down even more, that could potentially cause some more issues. But it's all speculation at this point, and you want to keep a close eye on what is happening each week in the market. You want to watch our lives every Tuesday where I give you an update. Every month I give you a market stat so that you can see everything in a month view. And if you're interested in knowing what happened in 2024, you can take a look at that video where I talk all about what happened in the last year. Now, each week when we update you, I do compare this year to last year. I was suspecting and expecting that we would have very similar, if not a higher market, so higher sales price than last year. But with all this stuff impending, there's a big giant question mark now. But in reality, there was always a giant question mark because none of us have crystal balls. If you have questions about what the housing market means for you as a buyer, seller, or even a homeowner, comment down below and I'll make sure to answer that on my live videos on Tuesdays.